Okay, welcome everybody to today's webinar, Getting Your PM Career on the Right Track, Trends and Strategies. I'm Kevin Aguanno. I'll be your host for today. This is one in a series of webinars that we run roughly every 2 weeks throughout the year. In fact, this year we're going to have 37 of them, I believe. So we're actually better than one every 2 weeks on various topics around project management, leadership development, change management, etc. And wherever you found out about this one, keep looking around. You may find others that are of interest to you. We'll share some more information on how to find those later on in this program. The way we're going to be structuring things today is that during the presentation, the formal presentation format, we're going to ask you to please enter any questions that you have as we go through into the questions window on the web interface. If you're watching this live on our live webinar, you will see a questions tab on your phone or on the web interface. It'll be in the top right corner. It'll look like a little box with a question mark in it. If you click that, you'll be able to type in your question and we will answer the questions at the end. We will get through the presentation and deal with the questions towards the end of this presentation. If you're listening to this on the recording, apologize, you won't have an opportunity to ask questions, but you can always send your questions to sales@procept.com, sales@procept, Procept.com, and we would be happy to get back to you. Okay, enough for the logistics. We can begin. There are a lot of project management certifications out there, and a lot of PMs have been chasing the PMP. Should I be a Scrum Master? Should I chase down IPMA certification? What other PMI certifications are out there? They wonder, what is the marketplace demanding? And people are struggling with understanding where to go with this. So this presentation is designed to talk about where the current, how did we get to where we are today in terms of this plethora of certifications that are out there? Which ones are employers most interested in? How is the industry evolving a little bit? And very specific to the North American context, what's up at PMI? What are they doing? What's the next directions at PMI? And towards the end of this presentation, we're going to try and put on pull out our crystal ball and forecast into the future where we think this is going. We might be wrong, but we think we've seen some trends and we can sort of project them forward into the future and maybe give you a hint of how you should be evolving your PM career to be ready for what the future is throwing at us. Okay, so getting into the slides. As I said, I'm Kevin Aguanno. I've been a project manager for well over 30 years. I'm a classically trained project manager in IT and business transformation projects, research and development, marketing campaign development. I've even done construction projects, residential construction and industrial facilities. I've done all kinds of projects in all kinds of industries. And along the way, I've picked up a few things. I also have a whole bunch of Agile certifications. In fact, I was the one that first coined the term Agile Project Management back in 2001, and I'm well known in that community as well. I've written over 30 books on project management related topics. I teach it at various academic institutions. I've written lots of books, articles. I'm a well-known figure in the PM community, so feel free to reach out to me. If you wish to reach out to me, my contact information and more information about me can be found at procept.com/team/Kevin-Aguanno, or look me up on LinkedIn. Okay, getting into the topics. I'm first going to talk about certification for project managers overall, because this sort of sets the stage for where we're at and how did we get here. A well-rounded project manager needs more than just project management knowledge, being able to create a network diagram or a critical path calculation, a critical path-based schedule, and doing some risk management activities. That is not all the skills a project manager needs. In fact, The Project Management Institute, PMI, says a PM needs kind of 3 things to be a good project manager. They need PM-specific technical skills, like scheduling, like team management, like earned value, things like that. So we need these PM technical skills. We need general business skills. I need to understand and be able to read financial statements, for example, right? That's a helpful skill to have some financial background. I need to understand the general laws that the community has as they might apply to my organization, and maybe my industry, and maybe specific to my project too. So I may need some general business skills. And I'm going to need soft skills. I need creative problem solving. I need negotiation skills, persuasion skills, communication skills. These are needed as well to be a good project manager. So these 3 areas are important, but true project management competence, who's a good project manager, really comes when somebody has all 3 of these, the intersection of all 3 of these. Now, PMI, right from the very first version of the PMBOK guide, now there is something called the PMBOK, the Project Management Body of Knowledge. That was actually published by PMI in 1987, and it was generally an index. It was created by Max Weideman, a Canadian project management guru, and Max created this project management body of knowledge, which was really almost think of it as a table of contents or an index of all the things a project manager should know, that could touch on project management in various ways. And it was a long list. It was quite an involved document. People realized that was not enough to learn project management. That is not enough. That index didn't provide enough guidance. It was a very, very broad list of things that didn't provide enough guidance to create certifications and exams and things around that. We needed more direction. So in 1996, PMI published the guide to the project management body of knowledge, or what we call the PMBOK guide. And that was the first issue in 1996, primarily written by Bill Duncan. A bunch of people were involved, but he pretty much typed up the full final version. A lot of the ideas were his, the concept of knowledge areas and input and output and processes and the process groups and all that stuff. Anyway, in that introductory chapter of that 1996 edition of the PMBOK guide, PMI reflects this concept. It says, yes, you need generally accepted project management knowledge and practice. That's that PM technical skills. We also need that general business knowledge that we talked about. And they kind of lumped in some of the soft skills in there as well, leadership and team management, stuff like that. And they said there may be stuff specific to your application area, because construction project management is different than IT project management, different things that you should know specific to that domain, that area. But they said the PMBOK guide is only going to talk about the PM specific stuff. We're going to leave out that general knowledge and the application area. So again, that concept of you need a range of stuff, but the PMBOK guide doesn't address it all. And PMI always said you need to study more than just the PMBOK guide to pass the exams and to be a good project manager. Business is saying we need something more from our certifications. If the certification is only focused on the PM specific stuff, that doesn't guarantee me I got a good project manager. And in fact, business says that knowledge, right? I've read the PMBOK guide and I understand now the PM specific skills. And I've memorized them. Having that, I've even passed a certification exam. The PMP exam is a knowledge-based exam. They give you a bunch of questions based on content, not just from the PMBOK guide, but they're knowledge-based questions primarily, right? Now, knowledge is great, but business has said that competence is better. What's the difference? Knowledge is knowing some stuff. Competence is the ability to selectively apply that knowledge in a nuanced way according to the needs of the situation to achieve results. So in other words, Competence is being able to use that knowledge to drive business results consistently. You've done it before. You've got a history of doing it. You can probably repeat that success again in the future. And honestly, what businesses are really looking for is competence, not knowledge, right? Business cares about that more. It's not that you memorized a bunch of stuff, but you really don't know how to apply it in the real world. It's that you've got a track record of consistently applying it over and over to achieve great things. That's what business really wants. So competence is the real goal. The problem is that assessing competence is awkward. It's very contextual. It opens yourself to challenge about the methodology or biases, right? Not testing knowledge is easy. I can have a multiple choice exam and you got the answer right or wrong. We can mark it right or wrong. It's black and white about whether you've met the knowledge criteria. But assessing competence is a little bit awkward because we need to look at actual workplace performance. Have you used these skills effectively to achieve business results? And there may be a lot of factors that are different from situation to situation, project to project, that could affect your success that were outside of your competence, whether your executives changed their mind or went against your advice, whether laws changed partway through your project and you had to scramble to adapt, suppliers failing to meet their commitments. Things like that could affect how a project succeeds or fails, and even how a project manager is constrained or not in executing their practice. So assessing competence gets tricky. PMI has said we are not going to assess competence, generally speaking, and they haven't until now. From their start until the present day, PMI does not provide competence-based certifications because it opens up PMI to lawsuits. And we know that the US is a very litigious society, and PMI is concerned that if they say somebody is a competent project manager and somebody runs a project and that project, say it fails, say they run $1 billion project and the project fails dramatically, losing the sponsors, the stakeholders, millions and millions of dollars. Well, they might issue a lawsuit against PMI saying the only reason we assigned them to that project and hired them was because you said they were competent. Well, that opens up PMI to, endless liability. So PMI has very strategically decided to not go after competence until now. They may change their mind in the future, but up to now, they've decided not to pursue competence certifications, to pursue knowledge-based certifications. Not only are they more objective, they're easier to measure, they're easier to test, they also don't carry the same liability of saying that somebody is competent or not. Plus, say somebody fails your competence assessment. What do? Do you say you're not a competent project manager? That may open you to a lawsuit as well, because it could cost them their job, for example, if all of a sudden they're labeled as incompetent. That's not a good thing either. But that's what business really wants. So what do we do? PMI, the project management organization, says, quote, in today's increasingly complex and competitive global marketplace, technical skills, those PM specific technical skills, are simply not enough, right? So even though the PM certification exams are knowledge-based exams, they are primarily testing technical skills, PM technical skills. But PMI acknowledges those are not enough. Companies are seeking added skills in leadership and business intelligence to support longer range strategic objectives that support the bottom line. So what do we do about this? Well, PMI in 2010 put out something called the talent triangle. They started floating it a little bit earlier than 2010. It started appearing in some PMI discussions and documents, but it really became formally released in 2010. And the talent triangle said a project manager needs these 3 areas of knowledge and skills to be good at their job. They need the technical project management skills. That's classically what we've always tested in project managers. They need the general business knowledge, the strategic and business management. That's the general business skills that we talked about. And they need those soft skills, the leadership skills. This is what we were talking about early on back in 1996 and earlier, is that to be a good PM, you need those three things. So PMI formalized this in 2010 with the original publication of the Talent Triangle. Now, since 2010, PMI has evolved the Talent Triangle, largely in response to its more formal adoption of agile practices and its merging or buying and merging in the disciplined agile consortium. PMI created the new version of the Talent Triangle. Same three areas, we've just relabeled them. So the technical project management skills is now called our ways of working. So there may be traditional waterfall type, linear sequential ways of working. There may be iterative ways of working. There may be agile ways of working, or any kind of hybrids of all of those, right? That's the ways of working, the technical PM skills. The strategic and business management area got renamed to business acumen, the general business knowledge. And the leadership and soft skills got renamed power skills because of some earlier PMI research that shows that project success is largely driven by those soft skills. Creating a better, critical path schedule doesn't make your project more successful or not, but certainly having better risk management or team management skills or negotiation skills or stakeholder management abilities, being able to better motivate team members, resolve conflicts, etc., may make all the difference to your project failure or success. So those power skills sometimes are the big drivers of success, and PMI recognize that by renaming them power skills. Same talent triangle, just different labels. So PMI says we still need those three areas of things. The world is not all about PMI, though. There are other international project management standards other than the PMBOK guide. The IPMA, the International Project Management Association, which is a kind of like an umbrella organization for national project management societies around the world. Think of it as the UN of project management bodies. Sets global standards, and one of them is called the International Competence Baseline for Project Managers, the ICB. And the latest version, version 4 of the ICB, says we need 3 things to be a competent project manager. Sounds pretty familiar, right? We need practice. Those are the technical competencies or the ways of working. We need perspective. Those are the contextual competencies or the business acumen that we talked about. And we need people skills or the behavioral competencies or power skills that we talked about earlier. So it's the same as the talent triangle. And this is the latest version of the IPMA model, right, in their competence baseline. Even the earlier models that came out before the talent triangle still had these 3 areas. In fact, IPMA has been promoting these 3 areas since the 1990s. So far ahead of PMI, they had a formal model that showed these 3 areas and how they interact and contribute to project management. So basically, all of the major international standards bodies for project managers are saying the same thing. We need competence from our project managers, and to do that, I need to know the PM stuff, I need general business knowledge and skills, and I need proper soft skills. Remember I said PMI did some research that said soft skills are important. That's why we're going to call them the power skills. Well, in PMI's Pulse of the Profession report on navigating complexity, it was published a number of years ago, PMI called that right out. In their study, they looked at what were the most important skills to lead to success in highly complex projects. And leadership skills far outweighed the other skills, the technical skills or the strategic or business management skills. Those leadership skills are the power skills because they drive success under uncertainty and complexity and ambiguity. And if that's not describing our world today, I'm not sure what words do. So over time, our standards have evolved to try and accommodate some of this changing view of project management. So let's just look at PMI's view. 1996, we came up with the first version of the PMBOK guide. And roughly every 4 years, PMI has updated that since. It has to be on a 4-year renewal cycle because it's an ANSI, or an American National Standards Institute standard. So the rules are it has to go through regular maintenance and review cycles. Now, they try to keep it on a 4-year schedule. It's gotten off a little bit over the years, but roughly. So 96 was the first version of the PMBOK guide. Version 2 came out in 2000. And mostly the 2000 edition was just cleaning up some of the wording, expanding a couple definitions, adding a few more things to the glossary, expanding or changing. There were some of the wording in the 96 edition was too specific to one project management domain area or context. So there was some more expansion on some of the descriptions to make them more broadly applicable. 2004, another version of the PMBOK guide came out and started to introduce some more expansion of the content. And it really, the first real significant change didn't really start showing up until the 2008 edition, when we saw the inclusion now for the first time of a new knowledge area. We saw the addition of stakeholder management as a new knowledge area, because PMI was realizing that that early view of project management they were promoting since 96 was very restricted to the planning and execution of a project. Assuming the project was already defined, you're basically, think of it as a contractor's view of project management. You're handed a contract and you're said, deliver this, what this contract describes, deliver this project. So you're handed the scope, you're handed budget and timeline, and you're said, go now deliver this project, plan and execute this project. But there was some criticism from 96 to 2008 that projects start well before a contract is signed, right? We're talking about the requirements for the project. In fact, that early edition, the 1996 edition of the PMBOK guide, only mentioned requirements once. It was mentioned once in the document. Stakeholders were an afterthought. They really didn't go a lot of depth into it until we got later on into the 2008 edition. The original thinking was it was a contractor's view. All that stuff is done pre-project, right? Now in 2008, we're saying, yeah, but that early work is project management related. Gathering requirements, discussing needs with stakeholders, starting to pull them together to build a common vision for this project. You're making strategic decisions about the project. You might be setting expectations about the project, right? And then you have to document all those requirements and get reviews and sign-offs. And then you got to start planning out a solution and getting some budgets approved so that we can figure out, are we, build versus buy, getting quotes from vendors and issuing specs so you can get quotes so you can start to budget for this project. All of that is definitely related to project management, and it's definitely affecting the success of the project. So PMI said, the project actually starts earlier than the signing of the contract. So let's define that earlier work, and that's where they added that new knowledge area for stakeholder management, and they started adding in some of the wording around requirements gathering and management and defining the project, and expanded greatly on this role of a project charter. That early work also in parallel lined up with PMI launching their business analyst certification, the PMI PBA, because PMI was starting to try and claim that earlier phase as part of project management. Some of that was in response to the growth of the business analyst profession. When PMI launched the PMBOK guide in 96, around that time, there weren't very many PMPs out there. The program had been around for a bit, but the number of PMPs was tiny. I believe it was in the 4-digit range, low 4-digit range, if I'm not mistaken. It wasn't until the PMBOK guide came out in 96 that we started to see a rapid expansion, dramatic, exponential growth in the number of PMPs, the growth of the profession, the professionalism of the profession, as perhaps would be a better way of saying it, was seen as expanding dramatically, and we saw the dramatic growth of PMI in parallel. But there were a lot of people out there saying, yeah, but the project starts before the contract is signed. What are we going to do about all that? Specifically in some industries, like, for example, IT projects, software development projects, where you're given a business problem, but you have to, understand that problem and try to design solutions to that problem as part of the project definition. You're working with stakeholders to try and understand their issues and try and figure out what is the scope of this project. That is a problem particularly relevant to IT projects, not so much for other areas like maybe office moves, right? If you're doing office moves, or um, uh, uh, planning weddings, generally the scope is a little bit more clearly defined and understood. Even construction projects, right? We typically have a better understanding of scope, so that fuzziness isn't an issue on those projects. That fuzziness of defining the goals and trying to understand what people really want, and then dealing with all the changes in scope as people disagree and their minds change because their understanding of what they need matures over time. Those are problems very particular to certain types of projects, like IT projects, but not exclusively IT projects, and less on some of these other projects like construction projects. So in parallel, the IT industry was clamoring, for example, for something to help with that upfront definition. What are the skills? What do we need to do? What methodologies do we need? And we saw the emergence of the business analyst profession. And we saw the emergence of the IIBA, the International Institute for Business Analysts. This organization started growing in parallel to PMI. So we had PMI running the planning and execution of a project. We saw the IIBA governing the definition and launch of a project. And IIBA and their certification started growing quickly as well. And I think PMI strategically saw that as a bit of a threat, right? And PMI said, we should have ownership of the definition of a project as well as part of our scope. And the PMI actually negotiated to try and buy the IIBA around that time. There was discussions back and forth about buying them out and trying to merge them in. Now, those discussions fell through, and PMI ended up deciding to build it in-house instead to compete. And so they added the stakeholder stuff, et cetera. The front end of the project got added into the PMBOK guide in the 2008 edition, and they created the business analyst certification, the PMI PBA, Professional Business Analyst. They created that certification as well to try and, I guess, compete with the IIBA. And so that launched in 2008 into 2009, and it continued. The next revision of the PMBOK guide was in 2013, and that was the first time we saw the entrance of the word agile in the PMBOK guide. There were lots of efforts from 2000 for the 2004 and 8 editions to get agile mentioned, but there was a lot of resistance. It was seen as an IT specific thing or not relevant. There was a lot of resistance for that version of the PMBOK guide, the 2013 edition, but we did get at least agile got mentioned a couple times in the 2013 edition, but it dramatically transformed in the 2017 edition, which was PMBOK version 6. And in the 2017 version 6 edition, there was a huge agile practice guide that was created by PMI. Agile was embedded throughout the PMBOK guide. It became a much more embedded set of processes that project managers could use. But all of those from 1996 to 2017, let's call those evolutions of the PMBOK guide, of that original PMBOK guide. We added something, we expanded on something, we inserted some more content. It was growing, and in fact, the document that 6th edition is rather a heavy document. It's got a lot of pages. It's a pretty big document. It just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger as we added more things in. In January 2021, just as the pandemic was, raging through our global markets, in January 2021, PMI released PMBOK version 7. And that 7th edition was the first, not evolution of the PMBOK guide, but let's call it a revolution of the PMBOK guide. Instead of just adding content to the 6th edition, it was basically a ground up rewrite and rethink of our standard of the PMBOK guide. PMI actually went back to the drawing board and rethought how we should describe what project management knowledge and skills somebody should need. How do we define a competent project manager? How do we really position the stuff that they really need to know in today's modern environment? Because I mean, more than 20 years had passed since the original PMBOK guide, and the world had shifted around a bit, and new things, new business models and things had evolved. So let's really rethink what is good project management in today's day and age. And that was the what came out as the PMBOK version 7. And PMBOK 7 completely turned the project management world on its head, because they said, you know what, forget these knowledge areas, forget the input, outputs, and process groups. Let's get rid of all. Let's just start getting down to the basics, and let's think about foundational principles of project management. What are the basic principles that we need to agree on as project managers? Are the important ones? What thought processes should we have when we are thinking about projects? And that's where you do things like choose your delivery strategy. Should we choose a linear sequential approach, or an agile approach, or a hybrid approach? And in fact, agile and hybrid were embedded throughout the document as valid options. It was all rewritten. All of the content that was taken out of version 6 was still kind of needed for the PMP exam. So PMI took that content and made it still available through something called Standards Plus, which was an online platform available to members. And I guess non-members could subscribe to Standards Plus if they wanted that content as well, and was removed out of the PMBOK guide and put into this external document. A lot of concern over version 7 because it was so different. A lot of companies didn't want to change their internal processes because they like to say they're PMBOK compliant, but this new PMBOK was so different they weren't sure how to deal with that because they didn't want to refine all their practices, and all the things that they tied their processes into had been removed from the PMBOK guide and put on Standards Plus. There was a lot of pressure to PMI. PMI eventually republished that content from Standards Plus and put it back into book format and published it as, I call it PMBOK Guide Expansion Packs, is kind of how I describe it. But they had it, there was additional workplace guidance and standards documents that provided that information about the knowledge areas and the processes, process groups, and inputs and outputs and tools and all that stuff. So that's material content was still around. 2025, at the end of 2025, in November, December, PMI made available the PMBOK Guide version 8, the new one. It was available originally in electronic format at that time to PMI members only. Some printed versions started appearing at the PMI Global Congress in the fall, but it wasn't available to the public until a little bit later. As of right now, we're talking in January 2026. It is available for sale on Amazon for next day delivery. So it is fully out, PMBOK version 8, and it takes version 7 and expands on it. It's another evolution, not a revolution. It expands on version 7, and it puts back some of the concepts that were removed in version 6 when they created version 7. It puts some of those concepts back in, but in a more simplified, rewritten format, just to make sure that people are, the valued content they were missing is there. It's just we don't want you to focus too much on the nitpicky details that might be domain specific or contextual. We want you to focus still on those delivery principles and philosophies that we had in version 7. So version 8 is now out, and I encourage you to take a look at it. If you're a PMI member, it's free. Just log into your My PMI site and then you can go under, I think it's resources, and then you go into standards, and it's there, the PMBOK guide, and you can download it for free in PDF format. If you wish to order it online, Amazon is selling it, I believe, for $140 Canadian. I don't know what that is in US dollars, probably about $100 US, somewhere around in there. Please take a look and get yourself a copy. It's a very interesting read. I think it's very well done. Just as a point of declaration of interest here, I was involved in the version 7 and version 8 editions as a reviewer and providing input. And I had provided input into, I can't remember if it was the 2000 or 2004 edition as well. So I sort of have a vested interest in steering you towards these documents. But I do believe, honestly, the version 8 that's out now is a really solid document. And I think everybody should get a copy and read it through right now. Now, that's the PMI version of how the profession has changed. It went from a view of, take a contract and now deliver the contract, which was the 96 edition, like deliver that scope, get it done. And it started adding in the front end of the project, right? The BAs and the upfront definitions around the 2008 edition. We started to define the front end of a project. The 2021 version 7 edition, when they did a revolutionary rewrite of the document, they also started talking about change management, not change control, not changes to scope, but organizational change management, dealing with people's resistance to change as an important set of skills for a project manager. That started appearing in version 7 of the PMBOK guide and continues on in version 8 because, the old saying, if you build it, they will come. That's not always true. You can build something and people never use it, and you never achieve the business value that you were looking for. And as we all know as project managers, projects exist to make changes, to build a new product or service, to refine or evolve a set of processes or systems, to move something, what we're doing is to build something. We're making changes. Projects exist to implement changes to the world, and therefore change management, organizational change management, people change management skills are critical to project managers to make sure that whatever change the project puts in place is used to achieve the business benefits that were envisioned at the beginning that justified the creation of the project in the first place. So change management is discussed and defined as a skill set that project managers need in the 2021 version 7 of the PMBOK guide, and it's expanded a little bit further in the 2025 version 8 of the PMBOK guide. Version 8 also introduces something new. Throughout the document, there are dozens and dozens of references to sustainability in project management. So PMI has now baked sustainability, both environmental sustainability and we'll call it business model sustainability or business sustainability, into the standard for project managers. We need to think about this. You don't plan and execute your project with such a maniacal focus that you destroy all the people and environment and systems and the business around you, but you can claim I succeeded because I delivered what was in the charter on budget and on time. You need to think about those sustainability elements as well. And so that's embedded throughout version 8 of the PMBOK guide. Another reason why I think everybody should get it and read it. So PMI's understanding of project management has evolved from just the simple execution element of the project to the upfront definition phase of the project and the downstream change management, turnover, change management, making sure the project achieves its business objectives, the full life cycle end to end of the project. And it even thinks beyond that by getting into sustainability, much broader view of the project. We've zoomed out so we can see the big picture. Well, there's another international standards association we talked about earlier, the IPMA. IPMA is actually older than PMI. and it's in far more countries. IPMA has its own standard, the ICB. We talked about this, the International Competence Baseline. The ICB has gone through a few evolutions as well. It started much earlier than PMI. Before PMI did its PMBOK guide, IPMA already had a standards document, a competence baseline. Their most popular version for many years was created in 1999, version 3 of the PMBOK guide, and that was the most influential and grew dramatically internationally. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people were certified, maybe millions under this version 3 of the PMBOK guide that talked about all three areas. The ICB talked about what specific skills of project management needed in, I think it was 45 or 46 competence elements, crossing the PM technical skills, that's the part the PMBOK guide talks about, but also the business knowledge. What general business knowledge, skills, and competence does a PM need? And the soft skills that identified specific soft skills a PM needs. It got specific and it defined those skills and provided key competence indicators and things like that. So they provided that big picture view of all three elements, not just the PM specific skills of the PMBOK guide. So from that perspective, I always felt personally that it was a more thorough, well-developed standard. Version 4 came out in 2015, and that version was changed. They reduced the number of competence elements, not because they threw stuff out, but they combined some of them into that were similar in nature into a fewer number of categories. So they created version 4 of the International Competence Baseline, and that has been the international standard through 70 plus countries around the world since 2015. So now we're into 11 years. They're going to be releasing a new version in 2026. That's their version 5. That project is underway right now to define version 5, and it is going to be heavily influenced by sustainability as well, along with a number of other elements. Those will be heavily rewritten through the document. So the interesting thing was IPMA always had this broad view of project management. Right? A project starts when somebody first says, hey, I've got a good idea. This might be an interesting project, through all the understanding, evaluating that project, describing the objectives, defining the stakeholders, trying to come up with how much money we need. All that early thinking about the project is part of the project, and they provided in their standard a lot of references to that and how to think about that and what skills a PM needs to help with that part of the project, plus the execution, plus the adoption phase and all the organizational change management, everything. That was always part of the ICB standard. So PMI was kind of playing catch up for a bit. But PMI is a little bit ahead on some of the sustainability stuff right now. So very, very close and neck and neck, I think, currently on where they stand with the standards. They're very much compatible. They have slightly different focuses, but they're describing the same core set of competences. As PMI in version 7 and 8, they moved beyond just the PM specific skills, but they started getting into some of those defining some of the business knowledge and things that a PM needs to know to be able to make the strategic decisions about delivery models and dealing with stakeholders and business case. A big focus on value achievement. That's something that's now in the PMBOK guide in version 7 and 8, very much a value delivery focus that aligns it well with what the ICB from IPMA was doing for years. So the standards have grown closer over time rather than diverging, which is quite interesting. Along the way, as PMI has evolved, they've made some acquisitions, right? Along with all those changes. In 2013, PMI acquired Human Systems International, and this is an organization that helped them better understand how to, benchmarking people, how to better assess knowledge and skills and things like that, so they can create better exams, better questions and assessments, etc. PMI the following year bought ganthead.com, which was a large online PM community, and they renamed it projectmanagement.com and expanded on it dramatically. And this is now one of PMI's premier tools for communicating with its members and providing content and value, and it's sort of feeding the PM community itself. A few years later, in 2017, PMI, it's not really an acquisition, it's more of a partnership. PMI was instrumental in the creation of the Bright Line initiative, which is to provide strategy execution guidance for transformation initiatives. This one is kind of strange. It doesn't really fit PMI's main core mission and direction, but it's peripheral. It branches off from it because strategy execution is a project, right? Strategy execution is a project. Transformation initiatives are projects. So they're starting to provide, but it's more at the executive level rather than the project manager level. It's moving up a level, talking to executives about how do you think about these initiatives, getting into some of those bigger picture thinking. So it's tangential to PMI's main mission, but it is interconnected. It is linked. In 2019, in July, PMI bought the Disciplined Agile Consortium. PMI actually bought the Disciplined Agile Consortium because they had a number of certifications. I don't know, there was like maybe 5 or something like that, 6, somewhere in that range. They had a number of certifications with many tens of thousands of people certified in these various certifications, and they were growing rapidly. And with the rapid growth and adoption of Agile, PMI wanted to bring grow their own Agile initiatives. PMI came out with their PMI Agile Certified Practitioner. I think it was 2013, if I remember correctly. It might have been 2010, or I'm thinking 2013. So I'm just going by memory here, somewhere in that range. PMI ACP was growing, but not as quickly as some of these other certifications like Scrum certifications and the Disciplined Agile. Through the acquisition of the Disciplined Agile Consortium, PMI instantly gained deep credibility with the Agile community because now they had this core set of resources and best practices and knowledge bases of content directly related to how Agile can be applied in large enterprises, which is something that Scrum struggles with. The Scrum community works great in small, simple teams without a lot of governance. As soon as you throw them into large, complex organizational structures with regulatory requirements and everything else, that's a bunch of stuff that requires skills and knowledge outside of Scrum to be compliant and to deal with that. Disciplined Agile had already had all those skills and knowledge built in to their methodology. So for the first time, PMI actually owned a methodology, because Disciplined Agile Consortium, other than these certifications and this knowledge base, also owned the Disciplined Agile Delivery, or DAD, methodology. So PMI is the only methodology for delivering projects that PMI has ever owned and promoted, I guess, officially, is Agile, which surprises a lot of people. People thought PMI was a waterfall-based organization, but that's largely a misunderstanding of the original 96 edition of the PMBOK guide, because the 5 process groups were named after, 4 of them were named after waterfall process phases, project phases. People thought that PMI was preferring waterfall. But even that original PMBOK guide in 96, in the opening chapters, had descriptions of spiral development and other iterative methods to show that they were agnostic. They didn't prefer one delivery model over another. But in 2019, PMI actually bought an Agile methodology and still promotes it today. In 2019, PMI bought another one from Net Objectives. They bought the Flex methodology, which gave them one that had deep connection to some of the enterprise-related issues. So they bought Flex, another Agile methodologies. Now they have 2 Agile methodologies. It was a big year for them with Agile because that was leading up to the PMBOK 7 that was released just a few months later. That was all Agile-centric, or at least significantly agile centric. 50% of the PMP exam questions starting in January 2021 would be agile or hybrid agile related. So significant agile adoption within PMI during that time frame from fall 2019 into January 2021, a dramatic agile transformation at PMI. In 2021, PMI bought the PMI Citizen, or launched and bought the Citizen Developer initiative, which became the PMI Citizen Developer, which had a methodology and training. This one really puzzles me because it doesn't fit PMI's main mission objective of helping with projects. People manage and deliver projects so much as executing things, executing specific technical skills within a project. PMI Citizen Developer, if you haven't heard of it, it's a certification, a methodology, training, and certification about how to use software tools that allow you to create new software applications without writing code, like these drag and drop and clicky applications that allow you to build software, how to use those effectively to get your software out the door faster. Yes, it touches on project management because those are projects, and building software is a project, but it's very specific to one small niche area. And it isn't so much focusing on the project management skills, but on some of the technical behaviors and skills and things. So I'm a little bit, and the business decisions around this approach, I'm a little bit puzzled personally about what PMI was thinking when it branched off again in a tangential way with the Citizen Developer Initiative, but it's there. In 2023, PMI bought the PMO Global Alliance. Now, this one makes sense. This is on brand for PMI. The PMO Global Alliance was a nonprofit organization that was focusing on creating a methodology for managing and running and defining PMOs and measuring the performance of a PMO, assessing whether it's doing a good job or not, and certifications for PMO executives, leaders, managers. So PMI bought the PMO Global Alliance, and that's digestion is still underway. I mean, there's still impacts coming on additional certifications and stuff from PMI, or changes to their certifications. So wait for more coming there. PMI already has a PMO certification out that it got from the PMO Global Alliance, and there's likely more coming from them soon. In 2024, the next year, PMI bought Project Managers Without Borders, which was a nonprofit organization that tries to provide project managers to struggling or developing nations to help achieve some of their sustainability and development goals. In 2024, later that year, PMI bought the CPMAI from Cognilytica, which was an AI, a certification for project managers on how to manage AI adoption projects, AI projects, how to, with the specific issues on AI projects, how to manage the adoption and the governance around those AI projects. So PMI got its CPMAI certification through that Cognilytica acquisition in fall 2024. In January 2025, PMI jumped back onto its agile growth and bought the Agile Alliance. Now, the Agile Alliance is the core organization that originally came up with the term agile to define these iterative incremental delivery methods back in 2001. The ones that the Agile Alliance has been promoting agile standards and driving agile adoption, and it's a huge community of agile participants and also thought leaders, and has tons and tons of content and articles and community discussions. And just like when PMI bought Gantt-Head to create a PM community, they bought the Agile Alliance to get control of the agile community in January 2025. Significant move. In fact, many people in the Agile community were a little bit upset about that because they thought Agile existed despite or to spite PMI, because they saw project managers as the enforcers of corporate bureaucracy through all these project management practices. And they saw Agile as a response to that. They saw Agile as a response, saying, we don't need project managers, we're Agile. Now, that was something that I personally heard in the Agile conferences back in the early 2000s. And over time, the Agile community has become a little bit more nuanced and sophisticated in its understanding that there is Agile project management. And so PMI has now acquired that whole movement through acquisition of the Agile Alliance. And most recently, in April of 2025, it's not really an acquisition, it's another partnership, although it's a little bit fuzzy on where the border lies, where, you know, how much of an acquisition versus partnership it is. PMI has partnered with GPM, the Green Project Management Initiative, to create a Green Project Management certification focused on sustainable project management. So PMI has now offered on its website the GPMB, Green Project Management Basic Certification or Fundamental Certification. It's now a PMI certification. It's promoted by PMI. It's got PMI branding around it. That's something that you want to take a look at. And that kind of falls in line, as I said, with PMBOK version 8, which came out in the fall of 2025, having so much sustainability content threaded throughout the document. These are a big adoption of sustainability by PMI. Huge change. So with all these acquisitions, it starts to show you the direction PMI is taking, it's where it's invested and doubled down, and some weird little offshoots that it did that really don't make a lot of strategic sense, but you can start to see some of the big picture. Let's look at how it's affected PMI's certifications. So PMI started with the CAPM, right? The Certified Associate Project Manager. That was the junior entry-level certificate for PMs. They didn't start with that. They actually started with the PMP, but the CAPM is sort of the entry level. Their more advanced PM certificate is the PMP, the Project Management Professional, the one we all know and love. And then they have an advanced project management certificate called the Program Management Practitioner, or PGMP, which is a project management certification, right? That you can run the big, large, complex mega projects. And they also have one that's project management related. It's not directly for project managers, it's for portfolio managers, the Portfolio Management Professional, which is really about how do we govern a portfolio of projects that often are sharing budget or resource pools, and we have to make trade-offs between the various projects and still somehow deliver the package of projects successfully. It's project management related, certainly. That's the Portfolio Management Professional. Those are the only 4 project manager certifications that PMI has. They're all knowledge-based. They have some experiential requirements, but all those experiences could be on failed projects. It's not a competence-based certification. PMI has those 4 knowledge-based PM certificates. That's all they have for project managers that's exclusive to project managers. Now, they have some other stuff. For non-PMs, they have the PMI Scheduling Professional. Again, project management related, but a scheduler is not the project manager. It's a skill that project managers should have, but think of the scheduler as an assistant to the PM on some very large, for example, construction projects, where you may have 200 different vendors contributing to the big, large, complex project, and they all have uniquely negotiated schedules and updates and changes, and the scheduler is just managing and updating the schedule all the time so somebody can have a view of where things are at given the latest info. So that's the PMI Scheduling Professional. There's the PMI Risk Management Professional. Again, a skill PM should know, but it's not a project manager, it's a risk manager. Sometimes some projects have dedicated risk managers assigned. There's the PMI CPMAI, PMI Certified Professional in Managing AI. Again, not necessarily a PM certification, it's a specialty certificate. To get that, you do not have to be a project manager. If you read the requirements, you've taken a course and you've passed the exam, you don't need any project management qualification or experience to obtain that certification. We have the PMI Construction Professional, not a PM role. As long as you've worked in construction for 3 years, you can take the course and write and pass the exam. That's PMI's newest certification, the PMI Construction Professional. Again, it's not a PM certificate. It's issued by PMI. It's saying that you know things about scope management on construction projects, integration on construction projects, communications on construction projects, risk on construction projects, but it doesn't mean that you've ever managed a construction project. You just need 3 years experience working in construction. There's the PMO CP, the PMO Consulting Professional. These are for people advising PMOs, assessing PMOs, determining their level of maturity, right? So that's a PMO Consulting Professional. There's the PMI Professional Business Analyst, the PMI Agile Certified Practitioner, which is for people working in Agile projects, but not necessarily in a project manager role. The GPMB certification on Green Project Management, again, makes you sure you understand Green Project Management. There's no requirement that you are a project manager. You just have to take the course and write the exam. There is no requirement to actually be a project manager to write that exam. The PMI Disciplined Agile Fundamentals. This recently changed in summer of 2025. PMI canceled 3 existing Disciplined Agile certifications. The Disciplined Agile Scrum Master, Disciplined Agile Senior Scrum Master. There was also another Disciplined Agile certification, I forget. They collapsed those down into this new one called PMI Disciplined Agile Foundations. And in the fall of 2025, PMI took 2 other Disciplined Agile certifications, the Disciplined Agile Consultant and Disciplined Agile Value Stream Consultant, and collapsed those down into, Disciplined Agile Coach and Disciplined Agile Value Stream Consultant, and collapsed those down into a new one called PMI Disciplined Agile Leader. All of the existing Disciplined Agile certifications that were combined into these 2 still technically exist until they expire. Nobody will be able to renew those older certifications once they expire. These are the new ones moving forward. So PMI Disciplined Agile Foundations and PMI Disciplined Agile Leader. So PMI but all of those ones in the gray box, those certifications for non-PMs, do have a direct project management tie. These are skills PMs should have. These are called specialty certifications or certificates, dive deep on one narrow topic of interest to project managers. People who aren't PMs could get these certifications, but there is a PM connection somehow. But there was 3 more that really aren't project manager certifications, right? There's the PMI Citizen Developer Foundations, there's the Citizen Developer Practitioner, and the Citizen Developer Business Analyst. There were some additional certifications. Those really aren't project management related necessarily. They're more at a techie IT type certification. Not sure the strategy of where those fit in. So with this range of certifications, these acquisitions from PMI, what does the future look like for Canadian project managers? Well, here's my predictions. I expect PMI to come up with some kind of change management certification within the next few years, I'm thinking. They've been expanding their discussions of change management. It's been taking on a more important role in our last 2 versions of our standards, version 7 and 8 of the PMBOK guide. I'm thinking either PMI will develop their own change management certification, or they're going to acquire something from the Change Management Institute or ProSci. I think they're going to acquire or buy those organizations or build their own certification. So if you're interested in change and change management, I think that's a skill set you should probably start getting lined up because of that potential. It's certainly a growing interest from PMI in those topics. That's something you might want to think about as an added skill set for you. I expect there's going to be even a greater push to integrate sustainability and get that happening. I think we're going to see more certifications beyond the PMP. I think PMs are going to start looking for more of these specialty certifications so they can distinguish themselves. When I got my PMP, it's 5 digits. My PMP number starts with a 1 and it's 5 digits long. Like it's there was, under 20,000 PMPs out there at that time. Now there are millions. Now the numbers they're issuing, they're in the millions. So there's PMPs everywhere. So how do PMs stand out? The PMP is certainly, a needed certificate to work effectively in the Canadian project management environment right now. All the employers are looking for them. But how do you stand out from the 300 other job applications on the desk that also have a PMP? I think people are going to be looking for these extra add-on certifications to distinguish themselves. I think PMI is going to produce more of these micro certifications or badges. Take this one-day course, get a certificate, or take this course, write a simple little multiple choice exam and get a badge of some kind. I think there's going to be more of those. PMI already has a few of them. I think we'll see more of them. I think more third-party organizations are going to produce certifications that have PMP as an entry criterion. So if you have your PMP, we can give you these, and you pass our exam, you can get this additional certification. But when you apply, you already have to have your PMP. There's a couple of those out there. I think we're going to see more of those from other related professional associations. I think we're going to have more and more demand for what I call senior executive level project managers, ones who have business consulting background, ones who can have management consulting skills and can talk to business stakeholders about developing that project or program strategy, working up front with the stakeholders to define a project and help come up with the business case. I think there's going to be more thinking about that higher level vision of what are the benefits on this project and how do we achieve them long term, and coming up with that higher level planning. I think there's going to be more growth in that area. I think also that will affect the PMI program management professional. It's been kind of stagnant for years with PMI. I think it's gonna start picking up, given the nature and the larger, more complex projects we're seeing. I think we're going to see either the PGMP improve in its adoption, or I'm going to see PMI come up with some other alternatives or upgrades from the PMP that start to incorporate more of those elements. That ends the formal portion of this presentation. At this point, I'm going to take questions from the audience. So please type your questions into the chat window. The questions window on your web interface. You should see the questions tab. Please type your questions into the questions tab, and I will answer them as they come up. The first question is from Carla. Carla says, what about university degrees in project management? I think they hold a place. However, employers are a little bit challenged because a university degree means you've passed some academic requirements, written some essays on project management, read some books. Doesn't mean you've ever actually managed anything of any significance. Now, some university project management programs have some experiential content, right? Experiential learning. They give you some simulated projects to work on or manage as part of your course content. Some of them are quite good at that. Some of them don't have that at all. Some of them it's just case studies and things like that. But employers realize that doesn't necessarily translate into the workplace. So while it's helpful to have some academic credentials to show that you know project management, if you actually look at the job applications, they're looking for certifications. It doesn't say must have PMP or a university degree in project management. They typically say must have PMP or equivalent. as an entry criteria. And some of these HR teams filter for that. And if you actually look at these new online job posting systems, often there's AIs in the background filtering through all the applications. You can submit your resume, you can submit your profile, but the AI will filter you out if you don't have the right certifications. You may never actually see they may never actually look at your resume. It'll get blocked by the AI. So that's something to consider. Next question is from Lars. Lars says, do you anticipate specific changes from the 28 competence elements from the ICB-4 from IPMA for project management? Will we likely to see further bundling and or additional competence elements added? This is an interesting debate within the IPMA community, and I'm a member of that community, and I've been involved in some of their meetings and discussions around this. There was some discomfort with the collapse of the number of competence elements, like the bundling of them into a smaller number between version 3 and 4. Some people were very uncomfortable with that combination and the reduction in the number of competence elements because they thought there were some nuances that were then ignored. Version 5 project is only been underway for a few months. I don't believe they're going to throw out the approach on version 4, which is all focused on key competence indicators under a number of competence elements. I expect there will be a change in the number of competence indicators or competence elements. I think we'll see more competence indicators within some of the existing ones, and I think we might see an addition of one competence element at least that I know has been a discussion point among some players. I don't know if it'll eventually get approved because any changes to the ICB has to be voted on by the IPMA Council of Delegates, which is all of the countries around the world that are members of IPMA have to vote on those changes. So it's usually a little bit slow in making significant changes, and there's a lot of politics and debate and discussion. But I think there's going to be some change in this version 5. This is not just going to be, let's add in some wording. I think there's going to be some significant rethinking, and you're going to see a lot more sustainability woven into it throughout. So the nature of the wording will be much more expanded. And if you look at some of the recent publications, IPMA just last fall, so fall of 2025, produced a sustainability standard. And it's a rather extensive book and very well written. They're really serious on sustainability and project management. I think that's going to much more deeply affect the ICB, not just adding sustainability words in the existing competence elements. I think we're going to see some new, at least one new related sustainability competence elements. I hope that answers your question. Mahmoud asks, I hope I pronounced that right, asks, what certification should I start with? Well, that's a bit of a challenge because I don't know your situation. If you are in the Canadian marketplace, the #1 certification that most job applications for senior full-time project manager positions, what they're looking for is the PMP. PMI's PMP certificate, but that requires several years experience, and sometimes it's challenging for people to get. What you could also look at is getting a entry-level certification like the PMI's CAPM, which is the Certified Associate in Project Management, or its equivalent, the CPMA from IPMA, which is also called IPMA Level D. This is a certificate, it's a knowledge-based certification. It's an entry-level certification to show that you know the stuff of project management. Maybe you're lacking in experience, but you know enough that you can start working as an assistant project manager or a junior project manager with good, with somebody supervising you. you should be able to do a decent job on simpler, less complex projects. IPMA also has something called IPMA Level C, which is a certified project manager title, but it's for junior project managers as well. But that's a competence level certification. So after you've demonstrated you're competent and you can manage these simple projects on your own, then you can go get that IPMA Level C. But if you're just starting out, you're going to have to start with the CPMA or CAPM, depending on whether it's IPMA or PMI. I think that's your starting point. If you're a new graduate, that may be what you look at. But both of those are complex exams. They're not easy to pass. There might be an easier starting point. The Project Management Association of Canada, or PMAC, you can find them at pmac-agpc.ca. They have something called a Certified Project Coordinator. A project coordinator is like an assistant to the PM. And there are a lot of job postings for project coordinators. It's a great way for people that are just out of school looking to get into the PM career path to go get one of those certifications or to get one of those jobs as a project coordinator. You'll need something to show that you should be a good assistant PM. And that might be your CAPM or CPMA if you have them. If you don't, the Certified Project Coordinator is actually not a hard exam. It consists of 2 parts. 40 multiple choice questions is part 1. And they're designed to be pretty straightforward and simplified, easy to answer if you have taken at least a project management foundations or fundamentals course. They're deliberately worded in simple English, simple words. There's no trick questions because a lot of people are immigrants to Canada and they need a Canadian credential or certification to prove that they can work in our environment. And so understanding English might not be a first language. This exam was written to be very clear, straightforward, and not that complex. Also, you got 2 hours to answer 40 multiple choice questions. You've got a lot of time. The average person completes this exam, part 1, in about 45 to 50 minutes. So you've got double the amount of time that most people need. Lots of time. That's part 1. Part 2, after you pass part 1, is a skills demonstration. You'll be sent a case study of a project, 5 or 6 pages or something like that, order of magnitude, of information to read about a project. And then you have to create 3 project management deliverables based on that case study and submit them for marking. You're given a list of 5 and you can choose 3, any 3 that you want of that 5, and submit them for marking. And it could be build a schedule for this project or build a risk management, a risk assessment for this project, or a stakeholder management plan for this project, or a communications plan for this project, etc. There'll be a list of deliverables and you create 3 of them and submit them for marking. And if they're determined by the assessors to be professional and reasonably accurate and a quality deliverable that they would accept in the workplace, then you're certified. There is no time limit on that part 2. It's open book. You can take your time. There's no time limit. You can work on this as a project in the background, and when you think you've built the right deliverable and you think it's high quality and you've got 3 of them, you send them in for marking. So that might be a good way to start. Get your certified project coordinator if you have no experience, but you've taken at least a PM fundamentals course in school or something like that. Once you're a certified project coordinator, you can start getting project coordinator jobs and start accumulating the experience you need to work towards your PMP. Or if you feel you have the time and the knowledge and the experience enough to be able to pass the CAPM, go get that. Go write that more complex exam. That's the one from IPMA is 3 hours long. It's a piece of work. It's a tough exam. So you'll need lots of practice and stuff. So you might start with the project coordinator and then work towards your CPMA or CAPM. And once you've accumulated the several years of experience, then you can apply for your PMP. I think that's where I'd start. Also, something that would help is an Agile certification on the side. Whether it's a Scrum Master certification, right? Get your CSM or your SMC, your Scrum Master certification, or whether you get the Certified Agile Project Manager, right, from IPMA Canada, which is known as PMAC, Project Management Association of Canada. If you want your certified Agile Project Manager designation, those are pretty straightforward, multiple choice exam, no experience required certifications. That might be a great way of starting as well to show that you understand Agile Project Management. Great questions. We're pretty much out of time here. We're actually a little over time. If you have any further questions or knowledge related to this topic, you can reach out to me directly. My last name, Aguanno, Aguanno, at procept.com. That's Procept.com, procept.com. I'd be more than happy to answer your questions at any time. It was great speaking with you. This is one in a series of webinars that we run throughout the year. Please be aware of the series and look out for them. Find wherever you found this one, look out for the schedule. There's a lot to offer on all kinds of topics that are project management, leadership development, change management related. And the next webinar, if you're actually looking, let me see if I can find it. Of course, in a hurry like this, I don't have it at my fingertips. The next webinar is in 2 weeks, and I don't have the topic right on the top of my head, but please keep an eye out, and you'll be able to find it wherever you registered for this one, register for that. And if you miss any, they will be up on YouTube, usually within 48 hours after the completion of the webinar. They'll be up on YouTube for you to review, share with your friends, and spread the news. Thank you very much, everybody. I've been Kevin Aguanno. It was great speaking with you, and good luck and enjoy your projects.